This year marks the 30th anniversary of UNICEF here in Uzbekistan, but also 30 years since Uzbekistan ratified the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Joining us today in the studio is Mr. Ghassan Khalil from UNICEF, the representative in Greece. Thank you so much for taking the time. And we're going to learn a little bit more today about what are the rights of the child, how do they manifest here in the region. And that brings us to our first question is first, what are the rights of the child?
Thank you very much for hosting us. It's a great pleasure. And I would like to thank also my colleague, the UNICEF representative in Uzbekistan, Ms. Regina Castillo, for also inviting me. And I would like to say that child rights are very much defined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1989 on 20 November. And that day became the International Children's Day, and ratified by Uzbekistan in 1994, thus becoming an integral part of the national legislation. So child rights are all the human rights which are applicable for children and which ensure that dignity of every child is respected at all the times.
Mm-hmm. And do you still see that child rights, the agenda of it globally, it's still there in the forefront? People are still pursuing it and thinking that this is the way that we need to be going?
Child rights have been becoming stronger and stronger year after year. Why? First, because the Convention on the Rights of the Child is the human rights instrument which has got the highest number of ratifications of among all human rights instruments. So 196 countries ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the highest number. In addition to that, more and more states are discovering that child rights are crucial to achieve development. So civil societies and of course governments, private sector, religious leaders, communities, everyone is discovering year after year that the Sustainable Development Goals, there's no way to achieve them, and the Agenda 2030, there is no way to be accomplished if we don't invest very well in children. Mm-hmm. And that's why the child rights movement since 1989, the adoption of the convention, has been really getting more and more powerful. It's very much like your Dario, the river. I mean, it's like a river of rights for children growing and flowing and covering more and more areas, of course, countries by ratifying as well, and also reaching more and more children who are now rights holders. With children after the convention are not anymore objects of rights, they are the rights holders, and this is how we have to deal with them.
Then how do you see this manifesting here in Central Asia? How have the Central Asian countries adopted and adapted these rights of the child in any way, shape, or form over the last 30 so years?
I have to say that governments everywhere and in this region as well are again understanding more and more the importance of child rights. Mm-hmm. For instance, we cannot miss appreciating the efforts of the government of Uzbekistan and the support of UNICEF in Uzbekistan, which led now to have more than 70% of children attending preschool education. Mm-hmm. We cannot also not mention that under 5 years child mortality decreased. Also a lot of support from UNICEF to the efforts of the government to increase child participation. Many areas where we see a lot of development in child rights. So what is happening in Uzbekistan is also happening in other countries with maybe different areas of focus. But yes, all the countries are discovering more and more the importance of child rights. Some are behind in some areas, others are ahead in other areas. But I think that, yes, there is no government nowadays that does not recognize the importance of child rights. There are challenges, and these challenges are addressed by governments, by civil society, and UNICEF is there to provide the needed support in terms of advocacy, programming, support to legislative initiatives to make sure that your national legislations are in compliance with the convention and the implementation is also taking place.
This region is mostly, almost entirely secular. The governments themselves, they're not Islamic, but the populations are predominantly Islamic or in line with the Muslim religion and faith. How does Islam align with the rights of the child, and how does that impact, or does it create any barriers or challenges to implementing these rights in the region?
In the years of the drafting of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is 1979, 1989, religious leaders from all religions were part of the drafting. They were contributing through their governments, through civil society, through their institutions as well. And the Convention on the Rights of the Child got that high level of acceptance because it was supported by everyone. Now, I have to say that the engagement of religious leaders in general in supporting the implementation of the Convention is still not sufficient. There should be more support from the religious leaders. And this is an opportunity to say that Uzbekistan in this region was a pioneer, because 1.5 years ago, UNICEF Uzbekistan organized a meeting, a 2-day seminar with 72 imams who cover all the regions of Uzbekistan. And I had the honor to be there as the speaker and discussing with the 72 imams. And it was a wonderful seminar. Over 2 days, great discussions, and UNICEF Uzbekistan is continuing now this agenda and showing a model to other countries in the region on how to engage with religious leaders to support children's rights. The Convention on the Rights of the Child and Islam are in line. Both support children's rights.
They don't contradict each other.
But they don't contradict each other. But we have to provide the religious leaders with the appropriate interpretation of Islam and the Convention on the Rights of the Child.
Yes.
The problem is in the wrong interpretations. When one religious leader would go into explanations which are not correct, and which lead to violations of child rights. And this is the crucial role of the governments, of UNICEF, of course, is always there. And UNICEF has a global strategy on engagement with faith-based organizations. So we work with all faith-based or faith-based organizations to promote the correct and the sound concepts about children development, and child rights, and to make sure that religious leaders become supporters of children and their rights.
Well, then how were you able to engage and mobilize these 70 imams? How is that possible?
72 imams, in fact, and it was an amazing experience. And all of them, over 2 days, every single imam was fully engaged, participating, and they showed a lot of respect and a lot of appreciation. And I know very well from my colleagues in UNICEF Uzbekistan office that they are still in touch with many of the imams who attended, and also with the Muslim administration, of course, and continuing this positive engagement. And one of the key aims we had is that the imams would address children's issues and child rights in their Friday khutbah. And this is what promotes child rights and what encourages parents to respect the rights of their children, teachers as well, starting from violence against children to enrollment in early childhood education to all other areas of child rights.
One of the biggest parts of the Convention of Child Rights is the right to play, the right to education, the right to essentially happiness. And how does that align? Because from my experience in Uzbekistan, gender roles are very kind of well established within a lot of the tradition and culture here. They're not necessarily in relation to Islam, but just as a cultural manifestation is girls and boys have very specific roles in the families. How are we seeing changes in the ideas here in terms of the ability for boys to express any sort of emotion, or girls having any dream apart from becoming a mother and a housewife?
Yeah. I like very much the way you put it, the right to happiness. The right to play is mentioned in Article 31 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the right to play. And that's why when I go to schools in all countries, I ask in my duty station in Greece and in other countries when I visit, I ask children, do teachers keep you in the classroom during the break to do your homework if you didn't do it? And if they say yes, I tell them this is a violation of your right to play. Of course, teachers are not always happy hearing that, especially principals of schools. But this is the reality. This is because play has become a right in the convention. But here you have added the right to happiness. In fact, all the rights were formulated initially, the human rights, to ensure the dignity of the human being. And this is extremely in line with Islam when saying وَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, and we dignified the human being. So the dignity is the basis of rights. All the rights should lead to dignity. And with children, it's dignity and happiness. Now, the roles that are distributed, but also we discussed, for instance, many times, like the role of the father, let's say. Yes. I mean, the father playing with the boys and with the girls. This is under better parenting and UNICEF programs. We have to promote among parents the better parenting. Fathers especially should understand that they have the same responsibilities towards their children, same as the mothers. And when it comes to affection, affection is needed by both of them, by both parents. So that's why a part of UNICEF efforts to promote better parenting is to promote a healthier way of engaging with our children, playing with our children, providing them with the needed affection, so they grow up as persons who are secure. And by the way, since you mentioned Islam, this is exactly the concept of al-insan al-sawi, the person who's it doesn't have in English a translation, the person who's secure and comfortable and in peace with herself or himself. Al-insan al-sawi. To be like this, children should grow up in psychological safety and with a lot of love from both parents.
That's where a lot of misunderstanding comes in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is our role, all of us, UNICEF, but of course the government, civil society, teachers, everyone, to promote the sound concepts of raising a child.
I actually used to work as a teacher and a teacher trainer, and one of the key things I used to teach all of the English teachers, specifically here in Uzbekistan, was the importance of respecting your students and the importance of creating an understanding and inclusive classroom so that all the students have not equal but equitable access to learning.
Absolutely.
And I think that was one of the biggest barriers.
And learning without safety,
it's impossible.
Is impossible. A child who's afraid of being insulted by not talking about corporal punishment, but even insulted psychologically, will not learn well.
And not necessarily by the teacher, but by classmates, by
absolutely,
friends.
by anyone. Yeah. That's why the whole environment in the school has to be safe. If a child is bullied by classmates, definitely the child will not learn very well. Yeah. So it's the environment, the learning environment should be an environment conducive to child rights. And then the safety should be there, but also a lot of love. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is how children grow in the best way.
Yes, just like flowers don't grow if they are not watered and given sunlight. Absolutely. And nourished.
A lot of caring.
A lot of care.
A lot of care and caring.
And I think another important fact is not all the children will get that same affection or love or the right to play at home. So having that safe space in your classroom would also facilitate their development even further.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So this is what we call better parenting, but also, I mean, at school, a learning environment which respects child rights. So in UNICEF, we promote child-friendly schools, mm-hmm. or in other words, schools that respect child rights. It's not enough anymore to say, oh, the child is going to a school. No, it has to be a school which provides quality education, mm-hmm. and which respects children's rights.
That's the hard part.
It is hard, but I mean, a lot of work is being done, and I can say that in all societies, there is progress, but also there are still a lot of challenges.
Yes. And you haven't seen any backsliding in the region in terms of the way they're moving forward with child rights here?
I mean, there are always, areas where we see that some regression is happening, and this is where UNICEF steps in and starts focusing more on providing advocacy to those areas. We cannot generalize because it's not correct to generalize, but this happens all the time, unfortunately.
And it's global, not just region specific.
Absolutely, it's global. It happens here and there, but this is why there is an organization which is the world leading agency for children, UNICEF, but also other organizations as well, international NGOs, national NGOs, and other UN agencies as well, our sister agencies who also are responsible for human rights in general, women's and children's rights. So to remind the governments that this is happening here and there. But also there is a United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child based in Geneva, which is the body mentioned in the Convention on the Rights of the Child and responsible to monitor the implementation. Uzbekistan and every other state which ratified the convention, we call them state parties, they have to send every 5 years a periodic report to the committee in Geneva to assess how the implementation of the convention is happening. And then the committee issues concluding observations. In the concluding observations, they welcome the positive areas, the good developments. They also give recommendations, and also the middle part is about areas of concern. Mm-hmm. So there is an international mechanism which monitors the implementation of the Convention on Rights of the Child. UNICEF is supporting, but at the end of the day, the responsibility of the implementation is on the government. Yes. And the governments should implement. And it's very important that every government which ratified the convention would establish commissions and committees to monitor the implementation at national level.
But I think then one of the biggest challenges is not the government itself monitoring and implementing, but it's actually engaging with the local community, getting the parents, getting the communities to understand the importance of the children's rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the role of the, as you said, the community leaders and the community in general. For instance, municipalities, mayors, child-friendly cities initiative, religious leaders. I mean, this is the involvement of the community, the academia, universities, by establishing child rights centers and by connecting to schools, by incorporating child rights into curricula of universities. So imagine that every, for instance, judge, lawyer, social worker, medical doctor, I mean, they would have studied one course on child rights at university level. So perfect. We will have societies where people are very much aware of child rights and hopefully respecting child rights as well. So there is still a lot of work to do in promoting a stronger culture of child rights in all countries, and incorporation of child rights in the curricula of universities ensure that professionals, especially professionals who work directly with children, are equipped with the child rights knowledge, and they know how to apply the right skills also when dealing with children.
And this is a very
educators,
long-term vision.
It is long-term vision, but it has to start. If it does not start now, it will never happen. So, meanwhile, of course, in-service, what we call in-service training, like training of judges, training of lawyers, training of social workers, this is very important on child rights, so they get the needed knowledge and skills. But if we want to institutionalize the process of creating a stronger culture of child rights, we should work in parallel on incorporation of child rights into curricula.
Yeah. The global climate right now, over the last 3 or 4 years, even since COVID, a lot of the world has been in turmoil, in flux. There's multiple conflicts going on around the world, multiple environmental disasters, flash floods, forest fires, hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, everything that could happen has been happening, I feel like, more frequently over the last few years, which has also created many displaced peoples, many refugees, even within their own countries or across the borders. How do we ensure that the rights of the children are ensured if they are refugees in another country? How do we ensure that they aren't too badly affected by all of these disasters?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is very sad to address, because unfortunately we have been seeing more and more disasters happening and affecting mainly children. From World War I to World War II, the increase in casualties in civilians went up drastically. And then from World War II to nowadays conflicts, it also reached, I mean, more than 80% of casualties among civilians. So this is to speak about armed conflicts. And children do pay, unfortunately, a very high level of suffering because in armed conflicts. But at the same time, the climate change is also harming children and harming everyone. Natural disasters are increasing due to climate change as well. Wildfires are ravaging the forest due to climate change as well, increasing. They used to happen, but increasing. So at the first glance, we feel that the world is not becoming a better world for children, unfortunately. However, we should remain hopeful that with all the efforts that are happening and with more awareness on child rights, on human rights, and on climate change, these things will improve, hopefully. UNICEF and, of course, other similar agencies do the right advocacy with the governments. But I have to say that the governments are in the driver's seat. They drive the agendas, and the governments have to agree on a strong position to protect children, whether in armed conflicts or in natural disasters. Children should be always provided with the needed protection. Also, this leads to governments agreeing to have a more peaceful world. This is why the UN was established. This is the spirit in which the UN Charter was adopted in 1945. It's so sad that we are seeing humanity going into more and more conflicts and damaging our planet more and more. So we hope that the world's leaders and the communities become more aware that the world has resources for everyone. And children, as you said, have the right to live and to grow and to develop to their fullest potentials happily, with happiness. So this is what we do. Everyone in UNICEF, every member of UNICEF, we dream of a better world for children, and we act in this spirit.
Very poignant words. Mr. Khalil, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for hosting us.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.